Hey, everybody. Chris Vaccaro, just bringing you another episode of the Sachem Conversation, where we like to string together the oral history of people who lived here, grew up here, and helped make this community a great place. This episode, we're talking to Karen Ferguson Dayes, and I'm really excited to have you on here, Coach. Good to chat. Looking forward to hearing about your Sachem stories.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. Excited to tell some of them.
Yeah, and Karen played soccer at Sachem. She played at UConn, played for the U.S. Women's National Team, which has great notoriety today, which is great. We're going to talk about that, the explosion of, Title IX and female athletics and college sports. We're going to talk about NIL briefly, but really it's about your journey of going from, a young schoolgirl at Nokomis and achieving great things in sports. And really, hopefully Sachem has been that layer of foundation for you. And as I always say every episode, the purpose of this oral history project is to make sure we have a video, transcriptions, text, audio of the history of our community. So it's going to be stored every year. The block of interviews will be given in a hard drive and in print form to the Sachem Public Library, as well as the libraries at Sachem East and Sachem North. So they're hopefully for generations, for centuries, somehow, some way, people can hear and see what this place was all about when it first started in the 1900s, so to speak. And so, yeah, let's dive in with you. I mean, so when I say Sachem, when I talk about Sachem, I just said we've only emailed, but for me, it's a really special thing. What does Sachem mean for you, just broadly kicking it off here?
Yeah, I guess my lens with my school experience was through athletics, which I'm sure was for a lot of people, because to me, Sachem High School was so dominant on Long Island with their athletics programs, all of the sports teams, football, lacrosse. Of course, my space was women's soccer, but I think that the friendships and the relationships and the sports success, all of that. Now, I know certainly it was school, and I'm not putting that on the back burner, but I was so heavily tied to the sports side of things that I think that's the first thing that I think of. When I'm out in the community and people know that I'm from Long Island and they say, "Where are you from?" You don't even say your town, you say Sachem. I went to Sachem High School, and everybody knows where Sachem High School is. So really prideful in representing the high school and the school district in general. And it had its own notoriety. Its legacy precedes itself. So super happy to be with you today and to do this and to think about some of those wonderful memories from middle school, high school, and certainly high school. Our soccer team was really good. So a lot of my memories come from them.
When you think about soccer and Long Island, you definitely think about youth soccer. You think about Long Island Junior Soccer League. You think about Sachem Youth Soccer, which
Yeah.
in its own right was instrumental for the growth of so many players, not even in our community, but across the entire county. The fields over off of the Expressway Service Road near Waverly Avenue are historic. I mean, there's just thousands, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of young boys and girls have played there. What was your youth soccer experience like? And was that something that just obviously grew your love of the game from a young age?
Yeah, I think it was the combination of high school and club. So I played at those fields that you're talking about on the Expressway. I played for Sachem, the club, and because our high school was so big, a lot of my teammates on the high school team also were on the club team. Our club team was really, really good. So we had a lot of players from different parts of Long Island that traveled and commuted to play for our team. And we ultimately won a national championship. And a lot of the players from the high school team were on that national championship team. So, as I look back, did I understand and realize that our club team and our high school team were doing what they were doing then? No, of course, we just went day to day and loved it and we're competitive. But looking back on it now, I mean, we were really, like you said, laying the foundation for what's to come right now. And soccer, I mean, we're on the day to day. The U.S. plays Vietnam in the World Cup. So you see the explosion of women's soccer, both domestically and internationally, and kind of a cool byproduct of what we've done, 20, 30 years ago.
And when you get to middle school, obviously eventually get to high school and play varsity soccer, were there specific coaches that really made an impact in your life and early playing career?
Yeah, of course, from the high school, it was Steve Lorenz and Ralph Foreman, and then my club team was Joe Lee, and believe it or not, Joe Lee was a New York City Police Department. He worked for the NYPD. He was a cop. He really didn't know a ton about soccer, but what he knew was to how to get the best players together, and then how to bring in really good trainers to help us. And I love the man to death. I mean, what a wonderful guy to bring together such a great cadre of players and really produce a team that could win a national championship. So, all of those coaches. Now, I would be remiss, and I know it's basketball, but Risa Zander, she was amazing, and I know she was a basketball coach. I was fortunate to play for the varsity team. Let me rephrase that. I was fortunate to be on the roster for the varsity team.
Right.
Did not play. I got to watch Carrie Kazmarski and the legends from Sachem. But when Risa would look down the bench to look for subs, I would back up. Like, do not put me in. I'm a soccer player. Don't put me in basketball. So Risa was wonderful in her own right, even though it wasn't the soccer side of things. But for sure, Mr. Lorenz and Ralph Foreman and Risa Zander have influenced my coaching career and certainly had a major impact on my high school career.
Yeah, Steve Lorenz, one of those legends. He's in the Sachem Hall of Fame just as you are. I got to know him, especially later on in his life, and we touched base. Very perfect towards the end of his life. He said, make sure these certain players were inducted in the Sachem Hall of Fame. You had already been in at that point. You were one of the inaugural inductees in 2003. But just up until the last moment, he cared about the young girls that were on the rosters of his teams. And that 90s, like the whole 90s, the entire decade, that stretch of Sachem soccer, both for men and women, was some of the best soccer played in Long Island and Suffolk County history. And you got to experience a little bit of that. You were opening up early when we first started talking, just people knew Sachem. They understood who we are. Our name is our community. You don't need to be from Holbrook. You're from Sachem. When you got to a soccer field here, I believe it was the same feeling. Like, oh, we got to play Sachem. They're dominant. They have depth. They built something here that's going to last. I don't know if it did last. We've evolved a little bit here. But can you talk about what the feeling was like on the soccer field in the 90s? I mean, when Sachem was winning state championships?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you rolled up to a high school with the belief that we're going to win. And I think we rolled up to the high school and the opposition thought, oh man. So we knew we had a target on our back, but we had maybe I'll call it a humble arrogance, right? Like we knew we were really good, but Mr. Lorenz and all of us as people never really took that to this arrogant level. But we definitely had a confidence and we knew that we could win. We didn't always win. We won a lot. But certainly I think that was the feeling that we all had. In practice, we had a super fun time, but we're uber competitive. And then when we got to games, it was game on. We wanted to win a state championship.
And so at some point, you're obviously becoming stronger, faster, dominant on the field. I guess the recruiting process starts to pick up a little bit there. When are you starting to say, oh, I can play this game at a pretty high level. I can be a Division I player. When did the schools start coming? And are they coming to Sachem to see you play in the recruiting process? Or is it really the club team that is getting you the exposure? Talk about that.
Yeah, so back then, and it still is today, you weren't really getting recruited out of your high school per se. The coaches weren't coming to watch you play in high school. But again, our high school team bled into our club team. So there was a ton of us that morphed in between those two different spaces. The high school, I mean, the club environment, we didn't have a ton of coaches that were coming to watch us back then, right? Now it's exploded, and I'm one of those crazy coaches that sits on the sideline and watches, but we didn't have that. We had what was called ODP, the Olympic Development Program. So you went and you played and you either made or didn't make the regional team. And then that was where a lot of the coaches kind of saw you. So in that space was really, really where the recruiting took off. I don't think I ever really thought about soccer being a vehicle to get to college until my senior year of high school. And super fortunate and super grateful. I had grown up wanting to go to North Carolina. Who didn't? Who doesn't, right? Like they've got 23 national championships. That Anson did watch me play, and that wasn't an option. I still obviously coach against him now, and I'm happy to hear him say, "I made a mistake. I should have recruited you," which makes me feel a little bit better. But I did choose UConn and don't have any regrets. Lenny Santirez was my coach there. Had a wonderful experience there and got to college cups, and really amazing to have the opportunity to use something that you love and so passionate about to get you to a college, to get you a degree, and to be able to compete at the level I was able to in college. So really, again, you never really understand the value of it when you're going through it. Hindsight makes you realize how appreciative you should be.
And you wound up becoming a three-time All-American. That you rarely lost. Obviously, you know that your coach at UConn, Lenny, he's a legend in his own right. Everything worked out well. You got the exposure you want. You get, I'm sure, a lifetime worth of memories. What about the your development as a soccer player? How much more was it intense? You know, now that you're in this Division I program that was expecting to win, and not that you weren't expecting to win at Sachem, but you know, there's a big difference going up to Division I. When did you feel like you were in the right spot? Did you ever feel like you were comfortable? You know, how did that work as a, you know, the player mindset?
Yeah, no, you know what happens is, as with everybody who climbs through the different levels, is every level that you get to presents you with a greater challenge. So just when you think you've arrived, boom, you go to college, and then you're amongst everyone who was a superstar in high school. And then you're in college, and then maybe you get chosen to play with the national team, and you go there, and boom, you're the low man on the totem pole because everybody there is the best player in college. So I think that I was fortunate enough to have had those opportunities and those experiences that continue to keep the fire burning and keep me really trying to be the best version or the best soccer player I could be. Um, and it's good because, as you, like I said, as you think you've arrived, you get humbled when you get to that next environment. And then really it's about, okay, do I want this? And then do I have the inner drive and the passion to go be the best player I can be? And I don't know why, probably because I do think I know why. My parents took a back seat to my career as a soccer player. They were not helicopter parents, and they were there and supportive and cheered for me, but they did not drive that. Like nowadays, kids' parents are driving that a little bit more. So it was internal desire to be great on my part, not for my parents or for my family, for me. And I appreciate that. I truly, truly appreciate that. And I try to parent my son the same way, although I get into him a little bit more maybe than my parents did. But I do know that that's an important piece of it, is that you have to want it more than anybody else wants it. And I think that, I don't know where that came from, but certainly that's something that I was always striving to be the best version of myself. And when you're playing against Mia Hamm and Christine Lilly and players like that, you're never going to be better than them, but you can try to, which ultimately in turn makes you the best player you can be.
In terms of playing moments, and we're definitely going to talk about the U.S. team shortly. From Sachem, best moment, best memory that you can always hold on to.
Yeah, I mean, we won state championships, but I think the moments like, I mean, yesterday when I flew into New York here, when I was talking to my sisters about this, we were laughing about, we took this bus up to the state championship. It was a yellow school bus. I don't even know. It felt like it was a 10-hour ride, which it probably wasn't. The bus was dripping. We called the bus the dripper. We called the bus driver the ripper. And just those memories actually kind of overwhelm you a little bit more. Um, Again, because we were expected to win state championships and we were driven and wanted to win those. But the moments with the team and with the coaches, those are the moments that always kind of stick out. Do I remember playing against the teams and winning? I think it was Vestal. They had a wonderful player on the Vestal team. Um, they beat us one of the years. So I do remember, winning state championships and playing against teams. Northport High School was always a pretty big rival. So playing against the bigger teams when there was rivalries and then ultimately in state championships. But I think the times that the team was so fun, goofballs, and had a lot of characters, and really we enjoyed being around each other.
Yeah, and for the context, as you're referencing being in New York, normally you're in Louisville where you coach, and obviously we're going to talk a bunch about. When I had emailed you a couple weeks ago saying, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you for this Sachem piece," you're in Sachem talking about your Sachem days. I think the irony of that is perfect. So all these years later, if people watch or listen to this thing, I love the little connections that we always make. I love that you were able to reminisce about some of that stuff with your family too. And then, so you obviously you're in UConn. Talk about moments, games. What was the biggest thing that you'll always remember at UConn?
For me specifically, my first year there, right? I was a freshman, and I don't know if I expected to play as much as I did. I knew I wanted to play as much as I did, but I don't think I expected it. So as a freshman, really looking up to Beth Greco, Kim Prudding, those were players that were at UConn at the time. But my first year, we went all the way to the national championship game. Um, Ironically, we played against North Carolina at North Carolina, which was crazy that a national championship game would be on the site of a college home team. But we beat Santa Clara in the semifinal, and Brandy Chastain was on that team. And then we got to the final against Mia Hamm and Christine Lilly, and ultimately lost that game. But what a great experience as a freshman to go and play in your league and then to get to a national championship game. So I kind of thought, oh, this is the way we do this. We always get to the national championship, in college. And of course, that's not the way it goes, but having that opportunity and that experience my first year was pretty cool, because then every year after that, you strive to attain that feeling to get to a Final Four, to get to a national championship game.
Yeah, it's a rarity. It's not easy. You're going from state championships to national championships, so you're on this high. But you go through UConn again. You build up this propensity to play with the best in the world, but especially in America. When does the U.S. national team become not only a goal but a reality? Talk about the process of getting to play, and again, talk about irony of this conversation. U.S. women's the World Cup, the Women's World Cup is happening right now as we're talking, and there is no greater spotlight than the U.S. women's team. And you were on that team. That
Yeah.
is not something to ever be taken lightly. But you were on that team before it got the main exposure that it's getting today, which I find interesting and amazing all in the same breath.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the time, Anson, who was the women's coach at the University of North Carolina, was the national team coach. So I truly believe my first year, when I had wanted to go to Carolina, that wasn't where I was going to be recruited. I chose UConn. That first year, I had a pretty good first year. And then obviously playing them in the national championship, I do think that was probably when he realized, okay, we're going to bring her into the women's national team. It had always been a goal, but I don't know if you really understand how it works, when you're going through it, and it's as new as it is. And there wasn't a youth team, there wasn't a youth under 17 team and under 23 team. It was just a full team. Now we've kind of laid out this little structure within the US team that there's age groups below. So it's pretty obvious how you make the national team. You make the 17s, then you climb to the 23s. That wasn't the case when I was playing. So when they called and invited me into camp, that was an unbelievable experience, and not too many people. Uh, there was no coverage, right? So that was kind of the hard part. Is nobody really knew how great they were until the World Cup, and what was it, 91, when they exploded. Um, so kind of a cool experience to play. I did not play with them prior to 91. It was after that, and then got to go in and play with the best players, arguably in the world, like you were saying, in some really cool countries against some really cool teams, and had an unbelievable experience. Again, scared as hell, nervous as hell in those environments, but now looking back on them, pretty amazing opportunities with memories that I will cherish forever.
Yeah, and you're the only woman to play on in the international scale for U.S. soccer from Sachem. There's obviously Joe Scally on the men's side, who's on the U.S. men's team. He's in the Bundesliga playing for Borussia Mönchengladbach. I can say that pretty quickly. I memorized that. And so, yeah, you're like the pinnacle of the man and woman of soccer in our community. All these years later, it's cool to see.
So this is kind of interesting, because Joe Scally's mom was my best friend growing up, not even in high school.
Wow,
She was on our club soccer team, that's
I didn't
Sachem.
know this.
Yeah. So I joke, because I tell Margaret all the time, that's her name. His mom's name is Margaret. Dad's name is Joe. Margaret was an unbelievable soccer player. So I tell Joe all the time that you got your soccer ability from your mother. Like, your mother was better than you were. She unfortunately tore her ACL. And back then, when you tore your ACL, you kind of didn't rehab out of it. So Joe got some good genes from his mom and dad, and kind of cool that I obviously know the family and certainly know him. And when the US team came to Cincinnati, he left my family tickets. So we got to go and watch his first cap. He played the
Wow.
first time he put on a US jersey. We were there in Cincinnati to watch it. So really cool that I know their family and get to watch Margaret go through that journey with her son, which is way amazing for that young man right now.
That is amazing. I had no idea all those connections. I love that. That is how special our community is, that we can connect all those dots. And also really cool that you got to see the first cap for him. At
Yep.
some point, I know Frank Schmidt wants to do this, but I'd love to go see him play in Germany. I'd love to see him play in a US game at some point. He's still young. Hopefully we have another couple of decades ahead of watching him
Yeah.
play.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How many caps did you have for the US team?
I only had 2.
Okay. So
And I
very,
remember
very
them.
special.
Yeah, I remember them clear as day. So the first one was in Cyprus, and it was against Germany. And I remember when they were playing the US national anthem, I had my hand on my heart, and I would look to the right and I would look to the left, and I would see the players that I was playing with. And those were idols that you grow up watching and really thinking are amazing. And then I'm standing in the line before the game with my hand on my heart during the anthem, looking at these players. So pretty cool experience. And again, I'll remember. I just kind of had a moment where I remembered doing that. The hair on my arm stood up when I was hearing the anthem, because it's super prideful to wear the U.S. crest and to play amongst those great players and to play against quality players, which played Germany, and I'm sure some of those amazing German players were on that team as well.
And so, at what point in this now part of your life and journey are you saying, I want to do soccer for the rest of my life? I want to be involved with this. When does the coaching gene start turning on? And was it ever a doubt that this would be your life and profession and career?
My mom would tell you it would never be a doubt, because she says I used to run clinics on my front lawn in Holbrook with all the local kids. I do remember that, but she said I would bring all the kids and we would run clinics, but I never thought I was going to coach. I always thought about playing. So really, when I finished grad school, I thought, man, how do I continue to have a profession that still has soccer as a part of it? So I applied for a job at Boston University. And I think what the greatest thing in the world for me with coaching was, the woman that I had my first coaching experience with was Nancy Feldman. And what a great mentor she was and still is today. And I think she really continued to help me pursue coaching as a profession. And here I am, God, going on my 24th year at the University of Louisville.
And it's a lot of games, 200 plus games won, 6 appearances in the NCAA tournament. Um, so many lives that you've impacted, young women that have really just hopefully thrived under your leadership. What is the thing that makes you come back every day? The thing that keeps it special? What makes it such a unique journey and position for you to hold? And why do you love it so much?
I think it's 2 things, right? Like, I love the sport, but I think the sport as a vehicle to help young people see something in themselves that they don't yet see. Like, that's a pretty cool journey for young women to go on. Like, they come in, they lack the confidence, they lack, believing in themselves, and when you can help them do that through a sport, there's parallels with life with that. That's a life skill that you learn through being a great soccer player or a competitive soccer player, that are transferable, that you carry over into your real life, into being a mom, into being a badass worker at the job that you choose. So those are all of the reasons why. And I think it's super cool when your kids come back 10 years later and then they tell all these stories which have completely been embellished, but they're their stories and they're through their lens and their positive experiences with the university and how it's kind of shaped their life for what they're doing in their adult life now.
And the college game has changed so much. And I've seen this in every sport. You read the stories about the NIL, name, image, likeness, changing the scope of college sports, especially football, the big time money. It's a business more than ever. And I'm sure many coaches are saying, I don't want to deal with this. It's different than what it's supposed to be. But, things evolve. How are you handling that? How has it impacted your, life at Louisville? Is it difficult to manage? Do you enjoy this new challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I think something that I try to live by is meet them where they are, right? Like I can't continue to talk about how it was when I played because we've evolved and things have changed. So I've got to meet them where they are. And where they are is in a social media space 99% of their day, really trying to get their name and their brand attached to some monetary valuation, which I'm all about. That's not a problem. It does make it a little bit difficult when you're trying to coach a team and create this unification and team when they are in isolation, going out and having their own individual plans. But I'm fortunate. Right now, I've got a wonderful group of kids. They're all about the team and certainly trying to pursue name, image, and likeness on the side. We're also fortunate, at least right now, that we don't have $1 million name, image, and likeness deals right now. So at least for women's soccer, I know that they're there from a basketball standpoint, and at some point we'll cross that path. But it is a very real part of our recruiting. It's something that I endorse and do believe in, and will continue to. We can't broker those name, image, and likeness deals, so we have a completely different entity and at the university that handles that. But it's part of their reality, so we've got to be able to dive into that and be able to help them pursue the name, image, and likeness opportunities.
And then the other big part of just modern day society in sports is the evolution of women in sports and the equality of making sure that women are paid fairly at the pro level, that they're getting the exposure on the international level, like we talked about with the World Cup and the U.S. team. How much has that changed, and how much further do we have to go as a society to, bridge those gaps still?
Yeah, I really feel like we're on the cusp of it exploding. It has exploded a little bit quicker in England and Germany, where they're selling out stadiums 80,000. I know when the US played England in Wembley, there was 90,000 people there. So I do think that the NWSL here domestically has got to do a better job investing more in the teams. Otherwise, the players are going to start to go over internationally and maybe help those clubs continue to explode. So you're seeing it, but there's another level here domestically that I think we have to get to. One, in what we're paying the young women to play. I have a player, Amina Ekic, who plays for the Racing Louisville team, who I was fortunate enough to coach at Louisville. And she, in the off season, goes over to Australia for two reasons. One is to continue to subsidize her payment, but two, to stay in form. And it would be really wonderful if she just had to choose that to stay in form rather than to subsidize her income. So, we're getting close. We're not quite there yet, and I know a lot of the U.S. players are fighting the fight for equal pay, and I appreciate that, and empowering them to continue to do that because that's across all walks of life. But yeah, I do think within these, I hope that the World Cup is the precipice for this continuing to explode and really allowing the NWSL ownership groups to invest in it. You see San Diego Wave, Jill Ellis and Casey Stoney have really invested in that program, and they're selling out Snapdragon Stadium, and it's amazing if you really invest in women. I think you'll reap the reward if you do the investment on the front end.
And I think we're closer than ever, and I think it'll happen. And you look at a lot of the strides the WNBA has taken. Now there's this offshoot league that a couple of the players broke off to do in what would be the WNBA offseason to keep players here domestically and not have them go to Europe to make money.
Yeah.
It's part of this evolution. It may not be instant, but it's interesting to see. And even, the pro soccer game, we could talk about Messi and we could talk about MLS, and things have changed here, and it's only going to get bigger and better and faster. And I think that's great. It's great for men and women. It's great for young kids looking to make a life in soccer like you did. There's more opportunities today than there were, late 90s when you
Yeah.
broke into the game. So
Yep.
it's good.
Absolutely.
Well, we're almost at the end. I want to give you the opportunity. Closing thoughts, closing remarks, anything last Sachem feelings to share with the audience.
No, I guess I would thank you for inviting me to come on. Probably there's a million people that go to our school, right? So I appreciate you choosing me to come. And when I got the email, anytime I get an email from you, it elicits emotion. That's pretty cool because I am super proud of my experiences and affiliation and my time at Sachem, and have dear friends. I was just with Denise Laviola and her husband, John McAlone. He wrestled at Sachem. They're married. They were high school sweethearts, married, and live in Tampa. And when I go recruiting to Tampa, I get to stay with them. So those relationships you keep forever, those memories you have forever. So it was definitely a wonderful part of my career. And I appreciate you having me on the show.
My pleasure. Sachem Athletic Hall of Famer, Suffolk County Sports Hall of Famer, Louisville soccer coach for all these years, making a difference with Big East, ACC, a couple different conferences, U.S. women's team, state champion at Sachem. I can go on, but at the bottom line, just a Holbrook girl doing great things on a big level, and proud of your Sachem roots, which is what I care about most. So I appreciate your time, all the things you've done in the game, all the things you've done to inspire people unknowingly in our community. And, hopefully there's a couple of young Karen Fergusons running around Sachem now that'll be big time in the game as well. Thanks. Good luck this upcoming fall and your next season with Louisville. And let's all root for the U.S. women's team. Hopefully we have a good outcome too.
Absolutely. Yeah, excited about that game tonight. And certainly I'll be looking for those recruits from Sachem High School that I can bring to Louisville.
All right, perfect.